All right, let's dive right into a story that, if it's true, changes absolutely everything. We're talking about a text that claims to be the personal autobiography of an extraterrestrial god. This is supposed to be the entire history of the Annunaki on Earth, told by the guy who was there for all of it, their chief scientist, Enki. And this one sentence right here is the key to the whole thing. Just think about that. It wasn't about discovery or conquest or spreading wisdom. According to this record, the entire epic story of gods and humans began for a very specific, very practical reason. They needed gold. So why gold? What was so important about it? Well, to get that answer, we have to rewind way back and travel way out there to a planet the book calls Nibiru. You see, this whole incredible mission to Earth didn't start with ambition. It started with desperation. Their homeworld was dying.
And just look at the timescale we're dealing with here. This is staggering. It's a story that spans nearly 500,000 years. It covers their first landing, the actual creation of our species, a planet-wiping flood, and yet even a nuclear war fought by the gods. It's absolutely epic. So here was the core problem back on Nibiru. Their atmosphere, the very shield that kept them alive, was literally leaking into space. They had a hole in their sky, and with every orbit around their sun, it was getting bigger. If they didn't find a fix, and fast, everything and everyone on their planet was doomed. So back home, the council's having this huge, high-stakes debate. They've got two plans on the table. Plan A is the scientific fix. Find gold, grind it into a superfine dust, and spray it into the upper atmosphere to patch the hole. Plan B is, well, it's brute force. Let's use what the text calls weapons of terror to blow up our own volcanoes and hope the exhaust replenishes the atmosphere. Two very different, very drastic options.
While they're all arguing, a king named Alalu, who's about to be kicked off the throne, decides he's not going to wait around. He makes a run for it. He steals a spaceship, armed with those very weapons of terror, and makes a beeline for Earth, a planet their records said was rich in gold. He finds it, and then sends a message home that basically says, hey, guess what? I found the gold. Problem solved. And by the way, I'm king again. Talk about a power move. It completely forced the new ruler's hand, who had no choice but to send his own sons to Earth to take over.
Okay, so the Annunaki set up their first base on Earth, they call it Eridu, and the gold mining begins. But after thousands and thousands of years of this grueling, backbreaking work, a whole new crisis blows up. And this one leads to what is without a doubt the most startling claim in the entire book.
The Annunaki miners, who were basically astronauts and aristocrats, not laborers, they finally had enough. They reached a breaking point. So they burn their tools, march on their commander Enlil's headquarters, and make it very clear the work is stopping right now. The whole mission to save their home planet is suddenly on the verge of total failure.
So what do? The leaders are stuck, their workers are on strike, but going home empty-handed isn't an option. The fate of their world is hanging in the balance. What could they possibly do?
This is where Enki, the chief scientist, has a stroke of genius. He steps forward with this absolutely wild proposal. He says, don't find workers, let's make them. His plan is to take the most evolved primate they can find already living on Earth and use their own advanced genetics to give it a massive evolutionary upgrade. They would literally mix their own Annunaki genes with this creature's to create a hybrid being, a primitive worker. And there it is, the book's explanation for the origin of Homo sapiens. The Adamu, which means earthling, was a success. It was intelligent enough to take orders, strong enough to do the work, and the gold started flowing back to Nibiru again. The mission was saved. So humanity multiplies across the Earth and serves its purpose. But of course, a new threat was just over the horizon. This time, a natural disaster of cosmic proportions. And this crisis would ignite a bitter feud between the two brothers in charge, Enlil and Enki, over the fate of their very own creation. And this really gets to the heart of the conflict between these two. Enlil, the commander, he saw humanity as a tool that had gotten too noisy and out of control. His solution? Let the coming flood wipe the slate clean. But Enki, the scientist who actually created humanity, he saw them as his children. He felt responsible for them. And there was no way he was just going to let them die. Now, according to this story, the Great Flood wasn't a punishment from an angry god. It was a predictable scientific event. The Anunnaki knew that their home planet, Nibiru's orbit, was about to bring it close to Earth, and its massive gravitational pull, they calculated, would be strong enough to dislodge the entire Antarctic ice sheet, causing a tidal wave that would wash over the whole planet. But Enki was in a tough spot. He'd sworn an oath to the other Anunnaki leaders to keep the coming disaster a secret from humanity. So he had to get clever. He went to the reed hut where his human son, Ziusudra, this story's version of Noah, was living. And pretending to talk to the wall, Enki leaked these instructions, telling him to build a special kind of boat, a submersible that could survive the tumbling chaos of the giant wave. So Ziusudra and his family survive, humanity gets a second chance, and civilization is reborn. The Anunnaki even grant humans things like kingship and science. But that old family drama between Enlil's clan and Enki's clan, that didn't wash away in the flood. It just got worse over the next few thousand years, and it all boiled over into one final terrifying war. You know, the world after the flood basically became a giant chessboard for the gods and their descendants. You had Enki's son Marduk building his power base over in Egypt, and then you had Enlil's fiercely ambitious granddaughter, Inanna, making moves in Sumer. It was a divine Cold War, with humans caught in the middle, and it was only a matter of time before it turned hot. And the tipping point? It came down to a spaceport. The Enlil faction became convinced that Marduk was about to take control of their one and only launch pad to get back to Nibiru. And so, in a desperate, secret council, they made the decision to use the nuclear option. Literally. They voted to unleash the very same weapons of terror they'd brought to Earth all those centuries ago. The nuclear strike worked. The spaceport was destroyed. But they made a fatal miscalculation. They never accounted for the fallout. A massive radioactive cloud, which the Sumerian survivors called the Evil Wind, blew east, right over the heart of their own civilization in Sumer. It was an invisible plague that killed everything it touched. In an attempt to destroy their enemy, they ended up poisoning themselves. And just like that, the great Sumerian civilization was gone. Even the gods had to abandon their now toxic cities. It's in this tragic, desolate wasteland that a guilt-ridden Enki decides that the full, true story has to be written down as a warning for whoever comes next. So this is the whole setup for the book we're talking about. It's supposed to be the direct transcript. Enki finds a human survivor, a scribe named Engibsar, and for 40 days and nights he dictates this entire tragic history, everything from Nibiru's failing atmosphere to the nuclear winter they created. He holds nothing back, creating a record to be buried and hopefully found one day. And this is his ultimate point. This whole testimony isn't just about what happened, it's a warning. He's basically screaming across time, look at the patterns, our rivalries, our ambition, our wars. If you don't understand how we destroyed ourselves, you're just going to do it all over again. The key to the future, he says, is hidden in the past. And that leaves us with one heck of a question, doesn't it? Whether you take this text as literal history or as an ancient myth, the story is the same. It's about a brilliant, powerful species who nearly wiped themselves out because of their own conflicts. So as we look at our own world, all our technology, all our conflicts, you have to wonder, if this is a record of our past, what patterns are we repeating right now? And what does it foretell for our future?